अच्छा लगा कि सब लोग आए यहाँ पर। कभी कभी ऐसा लगता है कि पानी गिर रहा है, बरसात हो रहा है और कुछ हो रहा है तो क्यों जाएं, इसका मतलब क्या है, बट इट मीन्स अ लॉट एंड फॉर समवन, यू नो। सो बहुत अच्छी बात है कि आप सब लोग आए और ऐसा ही आपका सपोर्ट हमें चाहिए और आते रहिए। ये हम सब की लड़ाई है और सबको शामिल होना पड़ेगा इस लड़ाई में। तो कुछ लोग हैं यहाँ पर जो आगे क्या होगा उसके बारे में कहते जाएंगे। तो काशिफ भाई जो कि इस घटना से काफ़ी परिचित हैं और जुड़े हुए हैं, ग्राउंड लेवल में भी उनके कार्यकर्ता हैं, तो उसके बारे में थोड़ा सा बताएंगे। और तो काशिफ।
Thank you everyone for coming and in this rainy day. So we are here to gather to condemn and protest what's happening in India. The incident that happened was Mohammad Akhlaq was killed in Dadri in UP. So just to give you a little bit of background of what's really happening in India. So there used to be a trend of large-scale religious violence. So if you remember Nelly in Assam '83 or anti-Sikh violence in 1984, Mumbai '93, Gujarat 2002, there thousands of people used to be killed. But after 2002, they changed the fascist forces, the communal forces in India. They've changed their tactic, and now they're going for a small scale. And this has been happening for a while. That local level harassment, kill few people here and there. In 2013, Muzaffarnagar, UP, only 62 people were killed. And it's very surprising that they are capable of killing more. But now the strategy is to harass and terrorize a population rather than kill everybody. So it's a form of ethnic cleansing. And the way Mohammad Akhlaq was killed and his son was, still fighting for his life in the hospital, was to terrorize a community. It was a very surgical strike, if you will, in that sense. So we have to see how things are changing in India and see it in that context, not just murder of one person. And that's why that bothers us all. That it's not just about beef, rumor about beef, but is against anyone. So these are extremist forces, and they don't tolerate any dissent, anything that's different from their ideology, their way of thinking, their way of culture or life, or how you're supposed to act. You will be attacked. It doesn't matter you're Muslim, Christian, Hindu. It doesn't matter at all. And that's what we are concerned about. So just to give you a background of Bisera in Dadri, it's a small village, about 3,000 population. About 10% of them are Muslims, and Muslims there are very, very poor. Most of them are landless laborers. Some of them have their own small businesses. Like Akhlaq was, he owned a electric equipment repairing shop, and that was his business. But he was also a rented shop. That means he was just doing the business. He didn't own any property. So most of them are very poor. Historically, we have seen some communal violence happen when there's an economic activity competition. But this time, that was not the case. Muslims were very marginalized within the village. And in fact, there's a history of they're living together, and there was no problem. In fact, they're so poor that it's the Hindus of the village who actually give money to repair of mosque of the mosque that is in the village. So our reporters have said that there's no madrasa there. In fact, people are so poor, they're surviving. There's no even increased religious fervor among Muslims that will cause any hatred towards them. In fact, the imam of the only mosque in the village, he left for his hometown for Bakrid. So there's nobody to lead the prayer. Things like, just to give you a context of where things are in the village. So again, as Somnath was saying, the lane leading up to Akhlaq's house is not such a huge place that thousands of people can go there. But the idea again is to tell people that it was a mob violence that was announced from the temple. That was like a spontaneous thing. No, it wasn't. It was definitely planned. There are other Muslims in the village also. They weren't attacked at all because there's no reason to attack all of them. You can attack one and strike terror around the region, and that's what happened in Muzaffarnagar as well. Even though number of deaths were only less than 100, but hundreds of thousands of people, had to leave their place. So that is the context of this thing. The impact is again, as I'm saying, is people are really terrified of what's happening. Muslims, the families, they want to leave the village and go somewhere which will provide them protection. Politics is already happening on this. People have been accused of Muzaffarnagar violence. Sangeet So, BJP leader, he's there against when there's a curfew like situation, that Article 140, Section 144, that nobody can gather there. He holds a public meeting. District administration official goes to the family of the victim and says, you shouldn't speak out about this to the media, otherwise, there will be some repercussion of that. So things like that, politicians, administration, all stacked up. So it's really a situation, dire situation. And then the Prime Minister of India, his politics is actually this. He has become Prime Minister because getting away with this. He has set an example to Sangeet So and other leaders like this, that yes, you can kill and get away with murder and improve your political career. So that's what we are against, and we are here in that context to protest that. Thank you.
तो इस घटना के बाद हम में से कुछ लोगों ने जो लोग कुछ करना चाह रहे थे, उन्होंने तय किया कि इस टाइप की घटनाएं होते हैं तो ऐसा हो जाता है कि हम कहाँ जाएं, मतलब कैसे कोई प्रोटेस्ट या विजिल ऑर्गेनाइज किया जाए, लोगों को इकट्ठा करना मुश्किल रहता है। तो हम सोच रहे थे कि कोई एक ऐसा संगठन बनाने की ज़रूरत है जहाँ पर इस टाइप की यदि वारदात होते हैं तो तुरंत हम किसी से संपर्क कर सकें। तो उसी के बारे में हम लोग ईमेल के द्वारा चर्चा कर रहे थे। पर सोमनाथ बताएंगे कुछ उसके बारे में कि क्या प्लान है, कि आगे करना क्या है उसके बारे में। सोमनाथ।
So this is a spontaneous, forum of citizens across the US who are concerned with the violence that is going on in India, the premeditated violence. And this is only one event of many series of events that citizens who are concerned are planning to hold across the US, and we have already seen the protests in India. So of course you all well know what the reason for the protest is. It's the spark of it was the killing in Dadri, and the killing in Dadri was not just the killing of Mohammad Akhlaq. It was the killing of the pluralistic framework of India, where several communities have lived together in harmony for centuries together. Even the house of Mohammad Akhlaq was situated surrounded by a Hindu neighborhood. They were all Rajputs. And like Ravish Kumar has written so eloquently, that if there wasn't a semblance of harmony, Mohammad Akhlaq should not have been living in a Hindu neighborhood. He was living, and this was no mob violence like many people have said. This was a premeditated murder. We all know riots in India are never spontaneous. Riots are phenomena which by persistent years of work, people build up these networks, and when they need it, they just have to strike a match and the thing bursts open. Earlier this year, when I spent significant amount of my time traveling through the villages in Odisha, I could see the mobilization happening, where people were talking about Go Hatya when they had nothing in their field to feed their own self. There were certain flags, certain people like Praveen Togadia's sisters I'm talking about the villages in the forest in Koraput and Kalahandi. So this is not just a sudden outburst of someone announces that a beef is found here or a pork is found there and people lad pade. That is not the case. And if you go back in history, there are documented cases of beef being thrown into temple and pigs being thrown into a mosque. This is well documented in the 18th, 19th century, which have sparked riots. So we know, and what is more damning about this is the state's complicit support to this. When the Prime Minister spoke, the words that came out of his mouth were actually in support of the incident. He said, fight poverty. completely ignoring the premeditated way in which this has been built up over years. The priest was not from that village. Even the pradhan of the village does not know the priest. The priest has moved there 2 months or 3 months before that from Gujarat. So this whole thing was set up, and when the Prime Minister opens his mouth, and perhaps he opens it because the investing climate is going to get bad. People might think, oh, people are getting things there, maybe we should invest in. That is probably the impetus why the Prime Minister spoke up after 10 days. Which brings me to the point that we have to look at this communal violence also as a two-pronged strategy. This is how they mobilize people on the ground. That this is a Hindu, this is a Jain, this is a Christian, this is a Muslim, whatever, and divide people. And while people are caught up in that, in the back of the beyond, they are selling off the minerals, the mountains, the rivers, the seeds, everything to the corporations, which are directly benefiting these, leaders or political leaders and, whatever you call it, corporate rule rather. So we have to see this in this context. कि प्रधानमंत्री जी हमें चूतिया मत बनाइए, हम समझते हैं why you are doing this, we understand, right? This is your way of mobilization so that you can sell India to the big investors, to the big corporates. Everything is being sold off. If you go, I don't know how many of you visit rural India, countryside India. If you do, you will see entire mountains have been given off, entire rivers, entire forests have been given off. And people who are, getting the capacity to drive cars are not able to breathe the fresh air that is needed to drive a car. Delhi is one of the most polluted cities in the world today, and at the cost of, farmers committing suicides, everyone becoming landless in the rural India. So this communal violence is a means to that end also. So let us keep that in mind, and thank you everyone for coming out on a day like this. It makes a statement. I mean, this is the least we can do, is stand in the rain for the people in India who are getting affected by this violence every day. We have to keep them in mind. We have to stand in solidarity with them, and we plan to do many more of these events here in India and everywhere. And let us not, have these issues divide us. Let us stand together against the tyranny. That is what we should be fighting. We should tell Prime Minister it is not poverty, it is the tyranny that you have unleashed in India. That is what we are going to fight against. Poverty is being fought by people, and we know how to fight poverty. You don't know how to fight poverty because you have been creating poverty. You have been creating death, you have been creating misery, pauperization of the entire rural India. So we don't need a lesson from you how to fight poverty. We need you to step aside and not incite this violence for your political ends. Thanks.
Thank you so much. There is a poem that I would like to read. The poem is एक लड़ाई मानवता के लिए, एक लड़ाई इस जिंदगी के कीमत के लिए, एक लड़ाई हजारों मासूमों के लिए। यह लड़ाई जो अखलाक के मौत से शुरू नहीं हुई और ना ही यहीं पर रुकने वाली है। तुम्हारा ये ढकोसला वाला डेमोक्रेसी, तुम्हारा ये फांसीवाद वाला राज हमारे बच्चों को अजीबोगरीब शिक्षा दिलवा रहा है, जो देश के हर एक लंबी दाढ़ी वालों को जेल में डलवा रहा है, जो हमारे महिलाओं को मिलने वाली सम्मान को लुटवा रहा है। हाँ, ये वही ढकोसला वाला डेमोक्रेसी, वही सेक्युलरिज्म और विकास का बुलशिट जो हर बार असफल रहा है, जिसको तुम हम पर फोर्स करते हो। तुम्हारा वही ढकोसला वाला डेमोक्रेसी जो एक को बचाता है और दूसरे को मरवाता है, वही तुम्हारा ढकोसला वाला डेमोक्रेसी जो ताकतवरों की चौकीदारी करता है, जो कुछ लोगों के मजहब को महान और अन्य को घृणित कराता है, वही ढकोसला वाला डेमोक्रेसी। तुम्हारा ये जातिवाद का बढ़ावा देने का नारा, तुम्हारा ये अमीरों के गुलामी करने का चारा, तुम्हारा ये हिंदुइज्म का परिभाषा, तुम्हारा ये मुस्लिमों को पसंद करने का दिखावा कब तक, आखिर कब तक? हम प्यार करें तो लव जिहाद, लंबी दाढ़ी रखे तो आतंकवाद, कुर्ता पहने तो जिहादी, आखिरी नाम बताए तो देशद्रोही, मीट खाए तो मर्डर, और कहीं कहाँ पर नहीं, और कहाँ पर नहीं। दिन में, शाम में, रात में, घर किराए पर लेने पर, एयरपोर्ट पर, मंदिर पर, मस्जिद पर, सड़क पर, खेत पर, खलिहान पर, ट्रेन पर, बस पर, छत पर और घर के भीतर घुसकर। पर अब हम चुप नहीं बैठने वाले हैं, हम संघर्ष करेंगे, हम लड़ेंगे, हम विरोध करेंगे। यह जुलूस एक इरादे के साथ निकला है। यह लड़ाई लगातार जारी रहेगी और यह लम्हा ऐसा है जो रुकेगा नहीं, क्योंकि क्रांति कभी रुकती नहीं। If anyone wants to say anything, please do. Song कर दे? I don't know if everyone has a copy of this.
Follow you.
Yeah.
Okay. So everyone just follow whatever I say. अगर हो सके तो अब कोई
शम्मा जलाइए, अगर हो सके तो अब कोई शम्मा जलाइए,
अगर हो सके तो अब कोई शम्मा जलाइए,
अगर हो सके तो अब कोई शम्मा जलाइए,
अगर हो सके तो अब कोई शम्मा जलाइए,
अगर हो सके तो अब कोई शम्मा जलाइए,
अगर हो सके तो अब कोई शम्मा जलाइए,
अगर हो सके तो अब कोई शम्मा जलाइए,
इस दोहरे सियासत का अंधेरा मिटाइए,
इस दोहरे सियासत का अंधेरा मिटाइए,
इस दोहरे सियासत का अंधेरा मिटाइए,
इस दोहरे सियासत का अंधेरा मिटाइए।
नफरत फैला रहे हैं ये मजहब के नाम पर,
नफरत फैला रहे हैं ये मजहब के नाम पर,
नफरत फैला रहे हैं ये मजहब के नाम पर, सत्ता के भूखे लोगों से मजहब बचाइए,
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 अगर हो सके तो अब कोई शम्मा जलाइए, अगर हो सके तो अब कोई शम्मा जलाइए, दोहरे सियासत का अंधेरा मिटाइए, दोहरे सियासत का अंधेरा मिटाइए, अगर हो सके तो अब कोई शम्मा जलाइए, हो सके तो अब कोई शम्मा जलाइए, दोहरे सियासत का अंधेरा मिटाइए, हो सके तो। Anyone wants to say anything, please? Why they are here or why they think it is important? Because it is, sorry to speak again, but I just wanted to say that, nothing is going to change this except for people. Laws, bureaucrats, universities, corporations, nothing is going to change it. People have to step up. People have to have the capacity to feel others' pain. People have to think that it could be me, my mother, my sister, my brother, my father, it could be any one of us. So that's why it is the collective responsibility of people to step out, and especially people who have the privilege like we do. There are a lot of people who don't have this privilege. They have daggers hanging over their head and they are yet stepping out. When Shabdar Hasmi was killed, the next week his wife went back to the place he was killed and finished the street theatre. That is the kind of power the people in India have. People in India are not poor. People in India are strong. It's these tyrants that we need to kick out, and that will happen only when educated people, uneducated people, farmers, non-farmers will realize why this is happening. So that's why we have to step up, and we should talk to others. People who are maybe sitting on the fence, and tell them why this is happening and why it is important to come out and make a statement,
so that it is heard in Delhi and elsewhere else. So anyway, please, anyone has any thoughts, feel free to share.
So, I come from Bihar, and of course, this thing happening and getting all this media attention is, and I mean, this thing in itself is horrific. It's really bad. But unfortunately, it has not happened for the first time, and this won't be the last time. And it's not only happening to Muslims; it has been happening to a lot of other groups over time. If you look at the history of India, like coming from Bihar, Dalits getting killed in their homes, villages getting burned, it's like not new. I mean, in the past 20-25 years at least, they are now getting reported in newspapers. Before that, in 60s and 70s, these incidents like 100 Dalits killed, women raped, it won't even get reported like 30 kilometers away in Patna newspapers. So the point is that the nerve center is not about, now the Muslims are being targeted, now the Dalits are being targeted, now the tribals are getting targeted. Like what's happening to tribals, we know very well. What the situation in tribal areas, we all know very well. So the nerve center is this economic system we follow, which is based on exploitation, which is based on parasitism, and it just keeps raising its heads in different forms. So we need to see that larger pattern, and also, of course, we need to stand up, but we also need to join hands in solidarity with those. You cannot just stand against communalism, but at the same time, you can be for neoliberal economics. It cannot be, because that's the root of so many, almost all of those evils. So you need to, like, you want a job in the corporate sector, or you want like GDP growth, but at the same time you want that atrocities against tribal should stop, or atrocities against Dalits should stop, or against minorities should stop. It does not work that way. That's an essential component of the larger scheme of things within that economic system, that social system. So we need to also look at the structural issues and why things are happening, whom things have been happened to earlier, and need to connect with them. If you are for Muslims or you have for other minorities, you cannot be against tribals, you cannot be against Dalits. You have to stand with them in solidarity. So solidarity at a really broader scale, and I think that's the only thing which is going to work. Thank you.
To sort us out, and we have probably 200,000 young men were killed, murdered. So it's and by studying this pattern, we know that the political structures use this. But how do we stop this? And I think we have to pose that question and say, how do we do this? And one is through this standing here and protest. But for me, this is not enough. This is just one small part. I think, as one person said, the structural quality that exists, this is what it creates. And we have to deal with it. And we have to deal with even the global aspect of it, that our resources are being sold for pennies. And how are we going to stop all this? So I think we need to be organized, not just for this, but organized for our people.
Any other females have anything to say? Good. We all know this is not about eating beef. We all know it's not about, Hindu versus Muslim. But since you have made this fight about that, let me just tell you, that is not the kind of Hinduism that I believe in. That is not the kind of India that you are creating by telling us that, we should worship cows, and if you eat a cow, you're dead. If that's the kind of culture you're building, that's really evil. You're setting us up back. And thank you for writing our history, but we can do our own. We can write our own history, We already have such wealth of information and such wealth of love within communities. So it's not about beef, but if you think it is about beef, then that is not right.
I am from Lahore, Punjab. There was a time when we used to sing Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Isai, Bhai, Bhai. I hope wo subah kabhi to aayegi.
I'm a physician, and the thing that we're taught is that injustice, social injustice, is the pathway to all sorts of issues when it comes to health, the rights of minorities, and the overall health of a society. And I think the issue. What we're seeing in India is this nearly almost, hopefully not, but a permanent destruction of the social fabric of India. And I think that is what we're here to protest.